back to Miss Cray's classroom. Today in our reading lesson we are looking at problems and solutions in fiction texts. Our learning goal today is I'm learning to identify the problem and solution in a text, and our success criteria is I will be successful when I can describe the problem and solution from a fiction text. Let's get into it. The idea of problem and solutions in fiction text really stems from the classic beginning, middle and end approach. As students get older, they'll begin to realise that beginning, middle, end is really the same as beginning, problem, solution. Now, it's not always the same. In some instances, like when teens are reading fiction or in more sophisticated literature, you might encounter a story that has the problem at the very start, and that problem is responsible for setting all the wheels and all the other events in motion. So sometimes we do stray from that path, the beginning, problem, solution. Sometimes you might have problem, solution, that kind of thing. For primary reading though, it does tend to follow that beginning, problem, solution approach. So what we are going to be doing today is trying to identify that main problem in a text in some of the familiar ones that I have read already on this channel, and then also identifying that corresponding solution to that main problem. To do this, we are first going to read The Day the Crayons Quit by Drew Daywalt. Now, I'm not going to read the whole text today, but I do have a reading of it already on my channel. The link will be above now if you'd like to go read it yourself. Okay, so looking back at this text, it is centered on a big overarching problem that the characters are constantly referring to. Those crayons are always referring to. You at home, can you think of what the big problem was in this text? The big problem in this text was that all Duncan's crayons had quit. They were all fed up and wanted to be treated more fairly. So that was the main problem in this story. That's the reason why the crayons were writing to Duncan in the first place. Now we have identified the problem in this story. At home, can you think of the solution that Duncan came to? What happened at the end of the text? How was the problem resolved? At the end of this text, Duncan decided to use his crayons in different ways, different from the ways he was using them prior. He listened to the crayons and he changed his colouring habits. This is how the crayons problem was solved. And there it is. We identified the problem and solution in our first text. Let's do it one more time just to be sure though. If we look at Pumpkin Soup by Helen Cooper. Now, once again, I have already read this text, so I won't spend this video rereading it. So if you'd like to watch me reading it, the link will be above now, and I'll wait for you to come back. All right, you're back. Great. Now, let's think about the problem in this story. What was that problem that set the rest of the events in the text in motion? Yep, the problem was that Duck didn't want to pour in the salt anymore into the soup. He wanted to stir the soup, but that was not his job. So essentially, Cat and Squirrel would not let him stir the soup. So as a result of that, he left. Now, the main problem was that Duck wanted to stir the soup, not that Duck left. Duck only left because he wasn't allowed to stir the soup. So in fact, the problem is not that Duck left, but that he wanted to stir the soup in the first place. Again, Cat and Squirrel not being able to find Duck is a problem, but that problem only resulted from our main problem, Duck wanting to stir the soup. Now, what was the solution? What happened at the end of the text and showed that the problem was resolved? And I'll give you a clue. Duck coming back was not the solution to the problem. The solution was that when Duck did get back, Cat and Squirrel allowed him to stir the soup. And it was still the best you ever tasted. Alright, good job guys. Let's have a look at some activities you could do at home to practice identifying the problem and solution. Alright, we're back. And I've got a nice hot cup of tea. I hope you've got something nice and warm as well, because the weather is getting a little bit colder these days. So for younger students, I would suggest, instead of getting them to maybe write down the beginning, the problem and solution, first just get them to draw it. Draw the beginning, what happened at the start, draw the problem, what was that big thing that went wrong. Then draw the solution, how was the problem resolved. Always encourage those younger students to attempt to sound out words that would correspond with their pictures, but if not, help them sound it out themselves and then maybe let them dictate it to you. So the word dictate means the child will speak it and then you can write down what they're saying. I would then, once you have finished writing down that sentence, go back and review what you wrote in the student's own words and explain to them why you spelled the word went, W-E-N-T. Always talk about those sounds and always encourage them to sound those words out themselves. As students get older, now we're starting to look about maybe grade 2, 3, you can still get them to draw, but I would really be encouraging them to attempt at writing sentences. You are really breaking away from them relying on you to help them sound it out. They need to be doing that now independently. So a couple of ways you can get those 2, 3, maybe grade 4 kids to do it. One thing that I really like to use is sticky notes. Give students some sticky notes. If you don't have any sticky notes at home, just rip up pieces of paper. It doesn't have to be sticky. And I would get them to identify the problem and solution, mainly in the text, with the sticky note. So in Pumpkin Soup, I would go to the page where Duck wanted to stir the soup and Cat and Squirrel were angry, and I'd place that sticky note. I would then maybe get them to write the word problem on there so it was more easily identifiable, and then put another sticky note on the page that showed that solution. So Duck being able to stir the soup. And again, probably get them to write that word solution as well. Another way you can do this instead of using sticky notes is using what my students like to call a flipper-rama. Julie, if you're watching, thank you for the idea. We use it all the time. So what you're going to need for a flipper-rama, and I will demonstrate now, is a piece of paper. I'll just go get mine. And some texters. It's a really good thing that I rated my classroom before moving into distance learning, because I've got everything here ready to go. Alright, so what you're going to do is, first of all, if you're just identifying the problem solution, I would put your piece of paper portrait, and then I would fold it in half, like so. And then what you have to do, scissors, let me get them. Thought I was so organised this morning and I forgot my scissors. Take your scissors and then open your piece of paper up and cut as rough as you can, equal halves of just one side of the paper. Do not cut the underside of it. So flip it around, that looks about half. Put that in there. And then if you were to stick this in a workbook or down on a table, you would have two opening flaps. And then I would label each of the flaps. You could do this activity with younger students, make sure they can copy the words like problem solution. So I've got problem solution, doesn't have to be pretty, mine's not always pretty. And then so underneath we have two sides. So younger students could simply maybe on this underside draw a picture of the problem, and then they could draw the picture of the solution. For those older kids though, 2, 3 and above, grade 2 and above, I would probably get them to do both. I would get them to write the problem and draw a picture, or write and draw a picture, and then I would get them to write down what the solution was and draw a picture of that solution as well. The main thing with the older students is to get them putting those words into proper sentences, and I would be expecting them to use things like character's name and setting if it was appropriate for that context as well. So there you have it. This is a flip-o-rama. Thank you to my kids for coming up with that name. We didn't know what to call it. You can also do this with a landscape piece of paper. You would just fold it in half the other way. And if you were doing an activity on beginning problem solution, so if you want to do 3 tabs, you could cut it like that as well. But it's just really important that you only cut one of the sides. Then you can stick it in your book. Being able to identify the problem and solution in a fiction text becomes really important during our reading lessons, because then it transfers into our writing lessons. And once you can identify problem and solutions and you can describe them, then you can write with them in mind. A couple of fun ideas you could do at home. Take your favourite story. First, identify that problem and solution, and then change one of them. So for example, in The Day the Crayons Quit, the problem could be not that the crayons were fed up with Duncan's colouring habits, but maybe the problem was that Duncan was starting to use texters instead of his crayons. So the solution could be that Duncan then combines them in his pencil case and he uses the crayons to fill in, and he uses the texters to do the outlines of his colourings. So you're taking that text, you've identified the problem solution, then you're going to write about it. Another activity that I will often do at school is I will write the problem or the solution paragraph for my students, and I will get them to fill in either one. So if I write the problem to a story, they have to write the solution, or sometimes I'll write the solution and then they have to write the problem that links them together. This is a really fun activity I find, especially if you're doing it at home, because you will really see the difference in the different children's imagination. For younger students, again, you could scaffold them with doing these same activities with drawings, and then as they gain their confidence, start leading them up into doing more written activities. We're using our self-isolation time wisely. My partner is putting up a pergola, really should be out there helping him, but you guys are way more important. That brings us to the end of our reading lesson today. Were you successful? Did you meet that success criteria? Are you able to describe the problem and solution in a fiction text? Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you always get notified when I upload a new video. Bye!